Hey, Jeff, do you have anyone's phone number there that you can call them and tell them we can't hear them?
Yeah, let me try.
All I have are town emails, and they might or might not be looking at them.
Yes. Hey, Michael, how you doing? Good. How are you? Good. Hey, listen, I'm with you guys on Zoom, and Terry, there's no audio. No audio. Okay. Hold on one sec. There you are. Yeah, we can't. Apparently, you guys, your audio isn't on or something. I'm on Zoom now. Oh, I mean, I think the problem is we can't hear you guys. Yeah. What was out and trying again? You bet. Okay, Michael, let me try this again. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I think I'm hearing you as well.
Okay. Nikki, I think we're set then?
I can hear people who are not in the room. I don't know that I can hear people in the room with the board.
Check 1, 2. Can you hear me, Nina?
Yes, I can. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Before we approve the agenda, I just wanted to take a minute to note the passing of Ed Toole, who served as our chair for a long time and was a true teacher and mentor to me for all matter zoning since I joined the board in 2009. So I would like us all to just take a minute of silence just to honor Ed and his dedication and time that he put in to the town. And I feel like he always did his best to be a good chair, run good meetings, and he will be missed. Okay, so Thank you. So if someone would make a motion to approve the agenda as drafted.
I will make that motion.
Okay, Michael makes the motion. Would someone, and Elisa seconds that motion. Okay, so all those in favor of approving the agenda as drafted, please say aye. Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Moving on to.
Excuse me, Susan,
Yes?
because Jeff is remote, you have to do a
Oh,
roll
the
call.
roll. Okay.
Sorry,
Do I have to do roll call for everyone or just for Jeff?
for everyone.
Okay. Okay,
Sorry.
so, all right, so approval of the agenda, I'm just gonna go across. So John,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Elisa,
Aye.
Michael, Jim.
Aye.
Okay. So for approval of the minutes, I had a comment. Did anyone have any comments on the minutes? I just had on page 9, it says under the first thing that I'm noted for, it says the zoning setbacks are considered to be reasonable for when a zoning changes. I think it should say the zoning setbacks are considered to be reasonable for the zoning district. And then it says, but she doesn't see it for a installation of a pool. I think it should say, but she doesn't see reducing a setback for the installation of a pool. Terry, do you want me to email that to you?
No, just give me a moment to get it all down.
Sure.
Boom, and that's all in the same, basically the same area. So the comment should read the zoning setbacks considered reasonable for the district,
Yep, for the zoning district.
the zoning district.
And instead of the word
other
it,
one is, but doesn't see reducing the setback,
reducing a setback for the installation of a pool.
a setback for. Yeah, I'm taking quick short, and installation of a pool. Okay, I've got that.
Okay, and then actually, as I'm saying this, there's one more little, it's just a tiny typo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's not the next time that I'm noted, but the time after that. It says she would have concerns approving a shed to, it says intruding. So it should just say intrude instead of intruding. You could either say approving a shed intruding into the setback or improve a shed to intrude into the setback, either.
I'll fix it. Got it.
Okay, cool. Those were the only things that I noticed. Did anyone else have any questions or comments or concerns about the minutes from last month? No. Okay. So we can make a motion to approve the minutes with those 2 or 3 changes. Would someone make that motion?
I'll make it.
Michael makes the motion. Elisa seconds. And again, I'll just do a roll call. Mark,
Aye.
Elisa,
Aye.
myself, I, Michael,
Aye.
and Jim.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so for the old business, those are both continued. Do I need to do motions for those? Yeah. Okay. So under old business, I'm going to do them. Can I do them together? Or do I have to do separate together? Okay. So would someone make a motion to continue application 0922 and application 37-21 to the January 12th, 2003 meeting?
Second.
Okay, so Elisa made the motion, Michael seconded it. I will do roll call again. So on this one, it's myself, on both I, Elisa,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
and Jim.
Aye.
Okay. And the next, under new business, we have 1022. that is requested to continue application 1022. Application. Oh, sorry, application. Sorry, hold on one second. Where is my, sorry, I was looking at the staff report, which makes it a little bit more difficult. Okay, so it's application 1022, application 1822, and application 1722 have all requested to continue to the January 12th, 2023 meeting. Would someone make a motion to grant those continuances? Elisa makes the
Did you
motion.
mention 1522?
No, she didn't say that.
No, 1522 is, we're hearing that one today.
We are.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's just 1022, 1822, and 1722 to continue to the January 12th, 2023 meeting. So Elisa, you made that motion?
Yes.
Okay, would someone second the motion?
What about application 922?
That one I already continued under old business.
Okay,
Okay, so we're just looking for a second on this.
Second.
Okay, so Michael seconds, and I will,
Madam Chair, I was contacted by one of the abutters on 1722, so I would need to recuse myself, but I'm happy to vote to continue 1822 and 1022.
okay. 1, 2, 3. Why don't I just skip you on the, okay, so
Now,
what?
Just a question
Mhm.
to the chair, of course. And you don't have to give me too much response. If this was like client, lawyer privilege, or was it somebody who just happened to call you to ask you a question about?
Somebody who had called me asking a question about it before I was appointed. So just to be on the safe side.
I think it's the correct thing to do.
Okay. And when that comes up, you know what, you could file one of the disclosures, so then if we do need you to sit, you at least have put that paperwork in.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so I'll start with you, John, then, for the continuance.
For 1822 or 1022?
I think you can do, I think you vote on the continuance for all three.
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Elisa,
Aye.
Michael, and Jim.
Aye.
Okay, all right, so with that out of the way, we can move on to 15-22. The applicant is Christopher Quick regarding 15 Delaney Road. We have Anderson and Krieger presenting, and that one starts on page.
I got that today. Okay. Yes. It's just one of those mentions of anything. I'm pretty sure.
Let's try to remember that our microphones are on, so if we're, not speaking, try to turn them off, or just be really cognizant of comments. Thank you. Can I ask a favor from you guys going forward? Could you put the page numbers on either this, like on the staff report? It just makes it much easier. What page does this one start on?
On 14, it's right in the beginning of the packet.
Oh, they took all the old ones out.
Very first.
Thank you. I usually pull all the stuff out of my packet. Okay. And who's presenting for this one?
I am Madam Chair,
Karen
Catherine
Cook. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Cook of Anderson and Krieger. And I am here representing Chris and Ann Quick of 62R Cliff Road. they have sought a determination that the full-time short-term rental of the property at 15 Delaney Road is a commercial use in a residential zone and therefore not authorized under Nantucket zoning bylaw. The Quicks are abutters to abutters within 300 feet of 15 Delaney and have been impacted by the short-term rental, the kind of full-time short-term rental of that property in their neighborhood. 15 Delaney is a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom house. There is no permanent or long-term residential use of that house. It is used exclusively as a short-term rental. It is advertised on multiple vacation websites and has a price range of anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 per week. Like with past decisions, when zoning enforcement was requested by my clients, the commissioner determined that the use of the property did not violate Nantucket zoning. Did not give a reason, just said that it was a lawful use in a residential zone. So on appeal, this is an appeal that I think most of you have heard me make before, so I will be brief and then let you ask whatever questions you have. The owner's use of this property is commercial, period. As I said, there is no other use of this property except as by the owner, except as a business investment. It is undisputed, no one lives there. And unlike earlier appeals that have been in front of your board, at this point, 2 different appellate level courts have reviewed the exact same circumstances as are presented here and determined that those properties that charge weekly rental rates and via contracts with third parties are indeed commercial in nature and are thus not permitted in residential districts.
On Nantucket?
Nope, those have been provided in Bourne and in Linfield. Those are appellate level cases, so they are binding with respect to all towns who adopt zoning bylaws under Chapter 40A. Nantucket does have a very similar bylaw to both Bourne and Linfield, particularly with respect to the definition of what is a quote accessory use. Now, I get into that because there has been some discussion that people have always rented on Nantucket, and thus it's been a traditional accessory use under the bylaw. Now, this is just not true as a matter of law, and this has been an issue that has been looked at by the courts. We certainly acknowledge that occasional rentals have always been part of home ownership in Nantucket. But these full-time ownership of properties as part of an investment portfolio is a relatively new construction and certainly not an accessory use in a residential zone. The bylaw defines accessory use, again, in the exact same way it does in Linfield and Bourne, as, quote, separate structures, buildings, or uses which are subordinate and customarily incidental to the principal structure, building, or use located on the same lot. A full-time short-term rental cannot be, as a matter of law, incidental to a primary residential use on the property if there is no primary residential use, right? So this is a different situation than someone who lives in the property and rents their property for a month or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks during the summer, right? That would be likely determined to be an accessory use to their primary residential use. This is a full-time short-term rental. That is the principal use of the property. And there's a whole host of cases that talk about what it means to be subordinate or incidental to that primary use. In those cases, I can certainly cite them for you. I provided some in our appeal packet, but the SJC has said, and I'm quoting here, it cannot be, quote, customarily incidental, unquote, if there is no other use other than the complained of use that is made of the property, right? So that goes directly to this case There is no other use but that short-term rental use. It cannot be accessory. Likewise, the Stevens case, which is born a 2020 case, that was the site there is 97 Mass Appeals Court, page 713. They explicitly found that short-term rental was not an accessory use because no one actually lived at the property. So I think that as a matter of law, you look at the use here, the use is commercial by the owner. It is not a traditional residential use, and it cannot also be determined to be an accessory use and thus allowed in this area, because the courts have already ruled on that issue that a full-time short-term rental can't be, it's not subordinate or incidental to any other use. So as I said, I was trying to be brief and quick, as these are arguments I think you have heard before, but I certainly, where there is a legal number, I certainly do want to make myself available for questions, or if anyone would like the kind of concept or argument explained further.
Okay. Steve, I see you have your hand up. And then I probably want to hear from Paul, and then.
Yeah, I represent the owner of the property, so if you want to let the building commissioner go first, or maybe
I think let's let Paul go first and then have you go. So Paul, if you can just introduce yourself for the.
Members of the board, Paul Murphy, building commissioner for the town of Nantucket. I don't have much more to add. My letter stands, on its own merit. This is not the first time that this issue has come up, and it's been my position all along that short-term rentals don't violate the zoning code. So that's pretty much about it.
Does anyone on the board have any questions for the building commissioner? No. Okay, seeing none, let's hear from the homeowner's representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll just like to also pay my respect to Mr. Toole, who was a good member of the board and also a good friend, and also to welcome John. So I'm going to make 3 points. One is that a lot of this is unnecessary because, as I think—
I'm sorry, can he just introduce himself?
Sure. My name is Stephen Cohen. I'm a local attorney. I represent the Bonnie and Ralph Keith, who are the owners of the property, through a family trust. The building commissioner has made a determination. Your review of that determination is on the arbitrary and capricious standard, which means that you only have to find that he had a reasonable basis to make it. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to have made the same determination. You just have to find that it was reasonable. So I think some of this is just a speed bump on the way to court. But since it's a speed bump on the way to court, I'd like to make some arguments. One is that everything that you heard before was inaccurate and untrue. And I'd like to roll through why that is. First of all, this is not exclusively a short-term rental. My client uses this property frequently, loves this property, and frankly would appreciate stop being harassed at this property. Secondly, and just to show you what I mean, I circulate these are some pictures, pass them down, of my clients and their families at the beach here in Nantucket, and planting hedges at the property by hand. They maintain it. They don't have a management company. My client, who is 80 years old, does all the work himself. And you'll see that there's photographs of his family in different outfits in different times. I don't know, there's 15, 18 people. He's 80 years old. He's got quite a large family at this point. And that property is used as a family property when it's not, and it's also used for rentals. So I think under was it Pickering argument that as long as it's an accessory use, it's okay. I think we could dismiss the claim based on that. But there's also been no complaints of any nuisances or noise at this property ever. And in fact, there's actually, that's not true. There was one complaint in which my client who called the police because their client, they were staying nearby, and their tenant was making noise, and they asked the tenant to keep it down, and the tenant didn't, so they had the police come. So the only time the police have come, I believe, was in 2017, was when my client asked the police to come. The Quicks have never complained, none of the neighbors have ever complained. And in fact, there's a letter in the file that you've received from the neighbor directly across the street saying that this is a quiet, and good neighbor property. The real issue before you is whether or not this is a short-term rental. It is not a short-term rental. It is a primary, it is used primarily by my clients for their property, but it is also used as a rental property. But the fact that it's used also as a rental property does not make that an accessory use. I would argue that short-term rentals are allowed as a primary use in the Nantucket zoning bylaw. And I say that because if you look at the bylaw, it doesn't provide for any kind of use that would qualify as a short-term rental, and it does regulate other things that are similar. And but let me just tell you a little bit about my client first. My clients are 80 years old. Mr. Keith first came to Nantucket in 1943 and attended the Academy Hill School. I don't know if you can get much more Nantucket than going to elementary school at the Academy Hill School, which I know you know is now closed, but that makes you as close to a wash ashore Nantucketer as I would say you can be at this point.
I think they give you cards that you can carry, actually.
Yeah.
To prove it.
So he, at that time, his parents bought 2 houses, and they lived in one, and they rented out the other one to summer visitors to pay their bills. So his family has been in this business of activity since the 40s. He was lucky enough to come here on his honeymoon with his wife in the 60s, in 1964, and in 1989, they purchased their first house on Main Street here. That house they used for personal business, and they also rented it out. The Quick family rented that house from them 3 different times as a short-term rental. So it is relatively ironic that my client not only knows the Quicks as their neighbor now, they know them as their tenant from the 80s and 90s. So I guess what's good for the goose may not be good for the gander in these cases. It is a remarkable irony that the Quicks were their tenants, not at this property, but at a prior property owned by my clients. The short-term rentals, if you look, it's not just that Nantucket has a long history of short-term rentals, which it does. You would have a history of more than 100 years of tourism here, of people staying in other people's homes and renting out homes, and basically entire communities being summer homes and short-term rentals. And I think that is one thing that substantially distinguishes Nantucket from the other cases that we see here. The Linfield case, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Linfield, but it is a suburban community that there is no tourism in Linfield. Nobody goes there and rents a house there. Apparently there's one house that was being sued over, but it's not a characteristic of Linfield that people would go there and have tourists there. Nantucket, it's the entire community is based on people coming here for short periods of time. That it's not just our history of it, it's the whole economy of the island, and it's the whole nature of the island. It's embedded in what we do here, that people come for short-term times, and that's been going on for 100 years. But if you look at the bylaw lists 7 or 8 or 9 different kinds of dwellings, primary, secondary, tertiary, apartments, whatever. I'm not going to go through all those definitions. It also lists transient residential facilities that are commercial units, and it lists what those are, and those are defined as having either no kitchen but are allowed for habitation, or as having centralized shared kitchens and are allowed for habitation. So you either have dwelling units that can only be used for primary, or you have commercial units that are differentiated. So you can't take something and there's nothing that says that the short-term use of a primary dwelling makes it a transient residential facility, because under the bylaw, it doesn't qualify. Does that make sense? Like the bylaw has both physical characteristics and use characteristics. So the argument being made here is, because these people are coming and going frequently, it must be a transient residential facility. But it's not. It's not under the way the bylaw defines the differences between primary and secondary, between residential dwellings and commercial transient residential facilities. The bylaw also provides that commercial uses are trades, occupations, and businesses, and then it says including transient residential facilities. So it specifically says that transient residential facilities are commercial uses, but then specifically says that private residential use is not. So what is private residential use? Private residential use is anything that's not transient residential use, a transient residential facility. So by the very definition of commercial in the Nantucket zoning bylaw, private dwellings are excluded from commercial use. Now, those private dwellings do have some commercial uses that are allowed. I'm sure you're familiar with the homeowner occupation that allows for certain trades and services and retail uses in homes. It does not say that some rental of your property is a use, is a commercial use. And in fact, the reason why it doesn't do that is because there is no difference between the use of a property by a rental family and a year-round family, or a summer-only family, or a year-round family. The use is the same. The family shows up, they use the property the same as everyone else. Either they live there and they go to work, they live there, they go to the beach. It's back and forth. The idea that a short-term rental is causing more commotion than a year-round family or a family that's there for 31 days, it doesn't hold any water. If you live next door to someone who's here for the whole summer, they have the same back and forth to the beach, or back and forth to work, or back and forth to New York, or back and forth to, whatever. They're coming and going the same as everybody else. They're going to the beach, they're going to events, they're going to the supermarket, just like everybody else. There's no material difference between use by someone who's here short and someone who's here longer, or someone who's here year-round. But the bylaw also defines residential dwellings, and it defines residential dwellings as facilities that have habitation, meaning sleeping, sanitation, meaning bathrooms, and cooking facilities. Okay, all of these dwellings have those things. Transient residential facilities do not have those all in one package. They have either shared kitchens or no kitchens. But there's no time limit. In the definition of dwelling units, it does not say and used for owner occupation. It does not say used year-round. There's no time limit. There's no rental. It doesn't say owner occupied. The definition itself of residential dwelling is about what types of facilities are in that building, not about who's using it and how long they're using it and under what legal right they're using it. So the bylaw does, in other times, talk about who can own a property, who can use a property, how long they have to be there, and those kind of things. You're all, I'm sure, familiar with the second dwelling bylaw that says that second dwellings have to be in common ownership with primary dwellings unless they're separated out under the Nantucket Housing Needs Covenant Program. So the bylaw, at times when it has determined that there should be an ownership qualification, has that in place. The same is true for the tertiary dwelling bylaw. The tertiary dwelling bylaw says that, okay, you can have a third dwelling on this unit, but it either has to be owned by a nonprofit, a religious organization, or has a year-round use only deed restriction on it. So again, when the town determined that there should be a bylaw in place that controls who owns the property or how long they're there, that bylaw is in existence, and that bylaw requires either owner occupancy or a deed restriction for year-round use for tertiary dwellings. It doesn't say anything like that for rentals. There are also restrictions on occupation if you have a, not just for tertiary dwellings, but also for Nantucket Housing Needs Covenant Program, there are restrictions against rental of those units. They essentially can't be rented out. So when the bylaw wants to address issues like whether or not you have to be a year-round resident, whether or not you can, who can own something and how they own it and how much they have to be there, it exists. It just doesn't exist in any way that shape, fit, or form for short-term rentals. So I would argue that there are no disturbances, that this is not solely a short-term rental, that it has nothing to do with the types of properties that are in the Linfield and Bourne case, that this is a mixed use that would qualify under the accessory use language that the council has suggested, but also that it's not really an accessory use, that it's an allowed primary use. Short-term rentals are. So I'd also suggest that Nantucket made the decision to allow short-term rentals very explicitly in its zoning code, and if you look at it, it basically prohibits commercial uses and transient residential facilities in almost every district. And because of that, we only have 900 hotel rooms on Nantucket. So I don't know if you're familiar with how many people come here in the summer, but I assure you it is tenfold of that. It is not, Nantucket could not exist if the definite short-term rental was that's being proposed by council was accepted. It's nonsensical in its application. So I would ask you to deny the arguments that are being made. I'd ask you to accept the arguments that I've made. But even if you don't care about what either one of us has said, and frankly you shouldn't, all you really need to do is support the building commissioner for his argument or for his determination, which you've actually done twice already in other cases and that are similar, and suggest that the building commissioner's decision was not arbitrary and capricious and was based on a reasonable basis, which he has laid out in the letter presented to you. Thank you.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair, if I may
Attorney.
respond?
Let me just, did you have anything that you wanted to say? No, okay, sure. Attorney Pickering Cook, you have the floor.
Thanks. So some of that was helpful. We can agree on one thing, that the Nantucket zoning bylaw does not expressly address the issue of short-term rentals. It is silent on this issue. I did not hear Mr. Cohen cite any provision which explicitly allows short-term rentals. I want to make clear that our argument is not that this is necessarily a transient residential facility. Our argument is that this is a commercial use. And as ridiculous as council may think that argument is, it is one that has been supported by the SJC and the Mass Appeals Court at this point. Whether this particular use is accessory or not depends on the amount of use that is made by the owner for personal use and the amount that is used and made for rental use. So the documentation that we have obtained, absent anything else from the owner, is that it shows this property available for rental online 365 days a year. Those are the facts in front of you, unless council can come forward with a number of days that it is used by the owner for personal use. I think that the argument that the impact of short-term rentals on a neighborhood are no different than any other residential use is a bit Pollyanna-ish. There's quite a bit of literature out there and studies that have been done that the impact of short-term rentals on a neighborhood are completely different than long-term, long-standing members of a neighborhood or community or long-term renters. You have people on Nantucket who, could be spending upwards of $50,000 or $60,000 for these large homes for 1 week rentals. It is their vacation. They are getting together for a bachelorette party. They are not treating that house or the neighbors generally as they would treat their own neighborhood. And because you know what, they feel entitled to have a vacation and good for them. But it does have a different impact on the neighbors, and a very real different impact. So I think, and I can certainly provide that literature to the board that sets forth the different impacts that short-term renters have on neighborhoods as opposed to long-term renters or long-term residential use. It is not a fluke that many other high-end vacation rental locations across the state and across the country have been working very hard to regulate short-term rentals because of the impact it's having on their neighborhoods. Now, Nantucket's not there yet. It's working on it, right? We all know that. It is working towards figuring out the appropriate bylaw and appropriate regulations of this type of use. But until then, you have to deal with the bylaw that's in front of you. And the bylaw that's in front of you does not explicitly allow this type of commercial use in a residential neighborhood. The bylaw, as opposing counsel said, allows many other types of residential uses and goes through great pains to explain those different types of dwellings and different types of uses that can be made, but nowhere can he point to short-term rentals being explicitly authorized in the zoning bylaw.
Nina?
Yeah.
So this conversation we've had before, and we've heard this before, and I'm not going to speak for the board. The board can have differing, if they want to talk about that more, but I think in the last few decisions where this has come up, the board has been clear that these are, as you say, larger policy issues that Nantucket may or may not adopt to change the bylaw or amend the bylaw, but that is up to town meeting. And this is a regulatory board. And as you said, we are looking at the bylaw that we have. And so I don't need to see literature about long-term effects. That's not our job here to make policy or change policy.
Sure.
And I think, Nantucket does have this history, whether the rest of the world, as council said, Linfield is a different animal.
And Bourne.
Well, I'm talking about Linfield, but and Bourne as well. We can distinguish that, and we've in previous applications we've spent a lot of time talking about those two cases. So I would like to see if the board has any questions for either attorney, and if not, then get to a board discussion about how we see how we think we want to move forward on this one.
Madam Chair, thank you. I appreciate those sentiments. I would clarify, you're not a regulatory board, you're a quasi-adjudicatory board. So you certainly can take in whatever other evidence you would find useful in making your decision, which is why I offered that up. But with that said, I have no illusions about the direction of this. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying for me. Nikki, is there anyone in the audience, just so we know if they have hands up? Okay. So does anyone on the board, you have the two prior decisions that we've made with similar, although not exact circumstances, but does anyone have any questions for either the building commissioner, Attorney Pickering Cook, or Attorney Cohen at this time?
No.
Okay. And if anyone on board wants the literature that attorney is offering to submit, great. If we want to have a discussion about larger rental policy on Nantucket, we can. I think that we've done that before. So does anyone have anything that they want to add? Or
Madam Chair, I have a question. Are we getting any updates from the short-term rental work group?
We have not at this point. I think just not in this board, but I think anecdotally I had heard that they were sort of working through. I don't know that they have anything yet to give to us, but I would think that we will hear from them at some point.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, well, so if I don't see anyone. Okay.
Okay, John Kitchener, you may go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick response to John. I'm on the short-term rental work group. What was decided and agreed with the select board earlier in the week, that we are going to not submit an article for the May meeting, but we are going to have a September or early fall special meeting where we will have our article to put forward. The reason for that mainly is that it's going to take until February to get really the accurate data from Granicus and the NARAB, the Nantucket Realtor Board. We can't unfortunately get that till early February, but as soon as we get it, we'll be back to work. And as I said, we'll have missed the main meeting, but we will have a special meeting in September.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So if there's no one in the audience who wishes to speak, and if we don't have anyone on Zoom, would someone care to make a motion on this?
Motion to uphold the building department's decision.
Okay, do you have something to add?
Do we need to close the public hearing first?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think we
Okay.
usually do. I don't
Great.
think we do. You're jumping back into your administrator
Maybe.
role.
Trying to see what I can bring.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Lisa's made the motion to uphold Mr. Murphy's decision. Would someone second that motion? And Michael seconds that motion. Okay, so I will do roll call for this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll start with John. So aye or nay?
So just to be clear, an I upholds Paul's determination?
Yes, it would be to uphold Paul's
So-
determination.
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Elisa,
Aye.
myself, I, Michael.
Quick question.
Sure.
This is an application to overturn, is that correct?
Correct.
It's
It's
an appeal of the
appeal.
an appeal of the building inspector's determination that the use of the property for short-term rentals does not violate the zoning bylaw. So they're appealing, saying that the use of the property as a short-term rental does violate the zoning bylaw. So we are voting to uphold the building commissioner's determination that the use of the property for short-term rentals does not violate the zoning bylaw. And we want to vote in the affirmative.
Correct.
So by voting, we're denying the appeal and supporting the building commissioner's determination.
Yes.
Okay, so that was, that passed unanimously. And that was the only application we had for today. Everyone else continued. Leslie did want to discuss something with us in other business. So we can.
Thank you
Just
all.
approve next year's schedule.
What was that? Oh, to vote to approve next year's schedule,
Yes.
sorry. Was that in here?
It is.
At the very end? Okay. I think I might have taken that out by mistake. Thank you. Oh, look at you guys. Okay, so the only one that we usually change is October. I don't know when Columbus Day is, but
It would have been the 1 week. It's fine, I fixed that.
okay, so we'll meet after, it won't be the Thursday before Columbus Day,
It will be.
the one after. Okay. Does anyone else have any issues with any of these proposed meeting dates at this time?
Yeah.
Okay, so would someone make a motion then to approve the 2023 meeting schedule as proposed?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so John makes the motion. Would someone second? Okay. All right, so we'll do roll call that way. Jim, I'll start with you this time. So Jim,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
myself, I, Elisa,
Aye.
and Mark.
Aye.
Okay, so here's our tentative schedule. And is Leslie on?
I am. So
Okay.
I wanted this on the agenda today, but it didn't make it on. There are several citizen petition articles that are proposed for town meeting that would remove review authority from the ZBA and move it to the planning board. There is another article that changes how approval not required plans under chapter 4181L are reviewed. If that were to pass, that would require the zoning board to grant variances or not grant variances in certain applications. It's a process that we used to have and removed it. And I'm going to put those in your packet for next meeting in January. I think those, you want to take a close look at those and maybe make a recommendation to the planning board for their public hearing, because they will be the ones to make the motion. So we will send those around to you for your review and discussion at the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, so did everyone get that? So we'll review those before the next meeting. And I do think it's something we want to pay close attention to and make sure that we make a recommendation to the planning board. So when they vote, they have all of our opinions on those. Anything else that anyone needs to discuss today? It was a quick one. Okay. Okay. All right. So Jim motion to adjourn, Elisa seconds. I don't think, do we need to do roll call for that? Sure. Okay, Jim?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Okay, myself, I, Elisa,
Aye.
and Mark.
Aye.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good job. Excuse me?
Sick of me already.
Couple weeks